Now the gas isn't working. What am I doing wrong? Hello, and yes, the gas can be a problem. But what other problems could you suffer from poor preparation? Have you got your van ready for the new season the best you possibly can? And what damage could spiders have done to your van over the winter? Spiders? In the van? Blooming hope not. Well, here is another problem which I've had today, apart from my camera just falling over. But on my way here, I had a problem as far as my tyre was concerned, and I got the low pressure warning. But fortunately for me, I am prepared because I always carry the Ryobi around with me. Now this is a fantastic inflator. Not only can I use it on my vehicle tyres, my van tyres and bike tyres, I also use it for footballs and inflatable kayaks and things. It's a really, really useful product and it helps me today, and I was lucky that I was prepared with it. Now that's something which I've talked about before as far as an essential item is concerned, and I've done a whole video on that which I'll link to at the end, which you can see. We can all suffer problems which we're unexpecting whilst we're on our daily drives, whether we're camping or we're just out and about. Unfortunately, these are things which can happen, but we can do certain things to help minimise the problems which we're going to have to make sure that we get the best experience we possibly can without getting ourselves into sticky situations. If your van has been laid up over the winter months because you've not wanted to take it out, it's probably a good idea to have it properly checked over. You should be having an annual service anyway, getting your fluids changed, etc. So it would be an ideal time to actually get it down to your local garage, get it checked out, make sure there's no problems, get the oil and filters changed, and make sure that it's going to be running the best it possibly can. Now, I firmly believe that a habitation check is something which is well worth having done on a camper van. And I know a lot of people are going to say you don't need a habitation check, but there's certain things which I think you should have checked out. So I'm going to do a video on that in the coming weeks, and I will explain how this can actually prevent some pretty major problems which could cause some serious damage to your van, which we certainly don't want to happen. Anyway, let's talk about some things that you can check before your first trip out for the season. And first, your pop top. When was the last time you actually had your pop top up? When you actually put it away the last time, was it actually dry? If you haven't had it up over the winter months, there could well be some mold in there. So it's well worth getting this up before you do go out on your first adventure of the year, and make sure that there's no mold in there. The mold can form in there, and the last thing you want to be doing is rocking up at your campsite or your stealth camp somewhere and having mold on there and you have to deal with it. So get it up before you leave, give it a good clean, and make sure that there's no mold on there. And also, whilst you're there, make sure it's mechanically sound. Make sure that each of the hinges are working properly and the struts are doing the job which they should be doing. Something else that a lot of people do is put a product on there, a waterproofing product, to make sure that it retains its water tightness. And the product which a lot of people use for this is Fabsil, but you do have to check with the manufacturer of your pop top to make sure that the material your actual canvas is made of is actually suitable for this, because some of the materials which can be used in canvases are not actually made for a product such as that going on. So do check before you use it. With your pop top all checked, let's have a look at some things inside the van which need your attention. And did you know that the gas flexible pipes actually have a date stamped on them? Yes, the flexible rubber pipes which you may have had in your van for absolutely donkey's years may well have perished, and they may not be suitable for your van any longer. So you do need to have these checked out. Have a look at them, have a look for that date, and make sure that you replace them. We all know about the cam belt and the timing belt, that does need to be changed because the material perishes, and we know what catastrophic effects that can have on our engine. Well, you imagine having a gas leak from a flexible pipe actually failing and gas being in the van when you're asleep. If there's an ignition source, so make sure that you check it. It is vital that you make sure that that is still in date, and if not, replace it. Just get it checked out and make sure you replace it if it is required. And still on gas, how much have you got left in your bottle? Have you actually checked this out? And also, if you have been hibernating for the last few months, you might not have realised that Keller are no longer providing the small gas bottles. The small bottles which you may well have in your camper van, Keller are no longer providing them. You're going to have to make a decision and find an alternative. So make sure you look into that before you go on your first trip. Otherwise, if you're halfway through cooking your bacon butties and you run out of gas, you might not be able to replace it for like, and your gas locker which you've got is not going to be big enough for the newer, bigger bottles. I did do another video on that, do have a look at that. But if you've got an LPG tank, this is going to be far easier than doing the shake test to see how much gas you've got left. You will have it on the display. Now make sure you check your display before you go out and find somewhere where you can actually fill up that tank. Make sure it is full before you go out on your first trip. And next we have the electrics. Now I firmly believe that this should be checked out by a professional. Electrics in a van are different than your home electrics in the fact that the van, it moves, the wires are subject to vibration, which can loosen the connections, wires can fray. If you've got one of these pop tops which have been fitted, which there's no gland on them, that fraying on the actual pop top roof, or even the metal roof, which I've seen some of them on, it can fray. Make sure that you have these wires checked out. Give an annual check. Might cost you an hour's labour from an electrician, but it could well be worth the while, because you certainly don't want to be having any fires in your van. You want to be safe rather than sorry, so do get them checked out. Even if your van is only a year old, I'd go and get it checked out. Get your van to a local electrician, ask them to spend an hour, however long it's going to take, on your van, just checking out the wires. Make sure it's wired up properly. Make sure that all the cables are correct and it is actually going to be safe for you to sleep in there. So having a check by a qualified electrician could really help prevent any major damage from occurring. But other than that, what about the electrics just in a simple sense as, is your battery still in a good condition? Has it been on an optimizer over the winter period? I have talked about these before, where you can connect them to an optimizer if you're not using the vehicle, and it keeps your battery in tip-top condition. You do need to keep the battery in a good state of charge to prevent any damage, and this goes for your leisure battery and also, importantly, your starter battery. If you haven't got an optimizer, I'll pop a link down below and you can actually have a look at some of the ones which are on there. They are highly recommended and they really do a good job. Now, if you did have a problem with your electrics, or maybe you did some dodgy cooking and a fire did break out, are you prepared? Have you got your smoke alarm and your carbon monoxide alarm in your van? These two pieces of equipment are vitally important, but it's not just a case of having them in the van. Is there a battery in it? Perfect example. That one hasn't got a battery in it. I did know that. Whereas this carbon monoxide alarm, it is in good working order. I know the battery is good, but also what you do need to check is check if there's a date on the actual alarm itself. They don't last forever, so you need to make sure that if you have got an older device that it is actually okay to still be using it. And as well as the alarms, have you got a fire extinguisher? Now, you might have heard me before talking about the Fire XO 7-in-1 extinguisher. Now, this is really important. I have seen still a few people are using powder fire extinguishers in the vans. Now, a powder fire extinguisher is not going to be any good for any oil cooking fires, and it might not necessarily be very good if you've got a lithium ion battery, which you might not have in your van, but you might have if you've got a problem with your phones. Now, this is something which I use, but something which you do need to check is if it's got a pressure gauge on it, is that pressure still adequate? Is it still what the pressure needs to be? Because if it isn't, then it's no good. But also make sure that this is in an accessible area. There's no point having it locked away in a cupboard at the back of your van, or maybe in a cube. It needs to be in an accessible area, so if something did happen, you would be able to get it. So either on top of your kitchen unit, or potentially in the footwell on your passenger side, and having one in the back as well. Just have a think about it, and if something did happen, where would you be in the van, and how easily could you actually get hold of your fire extinguisher? You need to get to it as quick as you possibly can. And also a fire blanket. It's good to have a fire blanket in the van as well. Now, this all might seem excessive, but at the end of the day, you've spent a lot of money on your van, whether it's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70,000 pounds on your van. It's still a lot of money, and the last thing you want it to do is go up in flames. So take as many precautions as you can and make sure you do everything to prevent any real harm from coming to your van. And speaking of harm, what about your first aid kit? Have you still got your first aid kit in your van, or did you take it out when winter was coming because you didn't need it in the van any longer? If you have, make sure you put it back in there, and also make sure that it's actually stocked up. Make sure that it's got the plasters in there, because Kids love a plaster. They're always taking plasters out and using them for the tiniest little cut which they've got on the finger. So make sure that you do still have enough. And if you are carrying tablets in there, your paracetamol and your ibuprofen, make sure that they are actually in there and make sure that they're in date. Now I can see in here that I've even got some throat sweets as well. I have got the tablets in there, although I've only got a few left, so I do need to stock up. So that's something which is going to be on my to-do list, to make sure that everything in there is going to be adequate for my needs. And another thing to be checking out is your water system. Now I do hope before you actually park your van up for the winter, you did actually fully flush this through. You empty the tanks, there was nothing left in there. Now before you actually use this system again, it's a good idea to flush it through. Now PuriClean is a good product which you can actually put in your system, flush it through and clean it out to make sure that you're not drinking any horrible, manky, disgusting, full of bacteria water. You don't want to be getting an upset stomach on your first trip away. It's cheap and easy to do and really worthwhile doing. And how about spiders? How can spiders cause damage to your van? Now, I certainly am not a fan of spiders, and they can cause damage to your van. Your fridge, your hob and the oven, they can get into the back of this, lay nests, and that can cause a problem for your appliances. On caravans for the winterization, you actually get plates to cover the vents which vent out from the fridge, and this is to help stop the spiders from getting in there and actually causing this damage which they can cause. I've been told it can be a really costly mistake to make, so make sure you get in behind these appliances, just give them a hoover out, make sure they're clean, and make sure that these spiders are not going to be causing you any problems. I know some of the sites which I go to, I can actually leave after I've been on site and I'll see these spiders on the back of the van. Not ideal. Now if they get in the van and they get in your fridge and your hob and your oven, then you could be suffering some of these problems which you certainly don't want to be doing. And let's face it, we don't want spiders in the van. Make sure you're prepared for your new season, the new trip, your best you possibly can. If you haven't seen my video on essential items, you can have a look at that here. Thanks for watching, take care, and I hope to see you soon. Safe travels.